The winter morning air was crisp and clear as the first rays of sunlight touched the frost-covered grounds of Sandringham Estate. Inside the grand Georgian mansion, the royal household was already bustling with quiet activity. King Charles had risen early, as was his custom, spending a few peaceful moments in his private study, reviewing the morning papers and enjoying his first cup of tea. The king moved through the familiar corridors of his beloved Norfolk retreat, each step echoing softly on the polished wooden floors. Sandringham held special meaning for him. It was here that his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, had spent her final Christmas, and where countless family memories have been created over decades. The walls seemed to whisper stories of previous royal Christmases, from his childhood days running through these same halls to the more recent gatherings as heir to the throne. In the breakfast room, staff members were carefully arranging the traditional Christmas morning meal. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with the aroma of warm pastries filled the air. Charles paused at the large windows overlooking the estate gardens, watching as groundskeepers made final preparations for the day ahead. Beyond the manicured lawns, he could see the path that would soon be lined with well-wishers making their way to St. Mary Magdalene Church. The king's thoughts drifted to the significance of this particular Christmas. His first as monarch during the holiday season felt both weighty and profoundly meaningful. He understood that this morning walk to church would be watched by millions around the world, not just as a royal tradition, but as a symbol of continuity and stability during times of change. Queen Camilla emerged from her private quarters, elegantly dressed for the morning service. Her warm smile immediately brightened the room as she joined her husband for their quiet breakfast together. They spoke in low tones about the day ahead, discussing the anticipated crowd and sharing their hopes for a peaceful, meaningful celebration with both family and the public who would gather to greet them. As they finished their meal, the sounds of other family members beginning their morning routines could be heard throughout the house. The Prince and Princess of Wales were helping their children prepare for the traditional walk, while other royal family members made their own preparations in various guest rooms throughout the estate. Outside, security personnel conducted their final sweeps of the route to the church. Local police officers coordinated with royal protection teams to ensure that both the family's safety and the public's ability to enjoy this annual tradition would be perfectly balanced. The familiar sight of these preparations reminded everyone involved that this was no ordinary family outing, but a cherished public ceremony that brought the monarchy closer to the people. Charles took one last look in the mirror, adjusting his coat and ensuring his appearance met the standards expected of a monarch on such an important day. The weight of the crown might not be physically present on his head, but he felt its responsibility in every gesture and decision. This walk to church would be his gift to the nation, a moment of shared celebration and unity. The anticipation in the air was palpable as the final minutes before departure ticked away. Soon, the doors of Sandringham House would open, and the royal family would emerge to greet the world on this special Christmas morning, continuing a tradition that connected past, present, and future in one meaningful journey down a Norfolk country lane. Long before the royal family emerged from Sandringham House, dedicated royal watchers had begun gathering along the pathway to St. Mary Magdalene Church. Margaret Thompson, a retired teacher from nearby King's Lynn, had arrived at dawn with her folding chair and thermos of hot chocolate. She had been coming to this same spot for over 30 years, watching as young princes grew into men and eventually became kings themselves. "It never gets old," she confided to her friend Dorothy, who was unwrapping homemade sandwiches from aluminum foil. "Every year, you think you know what to expect, but there's always something special about seeing them up close on Christmas morning." The crowd grew steadily as the morning progressed. Families with young children claimed spots near the front, hoping their little ones would catch a glimpse of the royal children. Parents lifted toddlers onto their shoulders while older children clutched small Union Jack flags that fluttered in the gentle breeze. The atmosphere was festive but respectful, with people sharing stories and offering each other cups of tea from their flasks. Among the gathering was James Mitchell, a photographer who had traveled from London specifically to capture this moment. He carefully adjusted his camera settings, knowing that the brief window when the royal family would pass by required perfect preparation. His press credentials allowed him a designated position, but he still felt the excitement building as more people arrived. Local residents mixed with visitors who had made special journeys for this occasion. The Patel family had driven down from Birmingham the previous evening, staying in a nearby bed and breakfast. Their teenage daughter Priya was particularly excited about the possibility of seeing Princess Catherine and the young princes and princess. "I've been following the royal family on social media for years," Priya explained to her parents. "But seeing them in person on Christmas morning feels like being part of history." The vicar of St. Mary Magdalene Church, Reverend Canon Dr. Paul Williams, made his way through the crowd, greeting familiar faces and welcoming newcomers. He had overseen many royal Christmas services, but each one still filled him with a sense of honor and responsibility. The small Norman church, with its simple stone architecture, would soon host one of the most watched religious services in the world. Police officers moved quietly through the crowd, their presence reassuring rather than intimidating. Community liaison officers chatted with regular attendees, many of whom they recognized from previous years. The security arrangements were thorough but unobtrusive, allowing the festive atmosphere to flourish naturally. As 10 o'clock approached, a noticeable shift occurred in the crowd's energy. Conversations became more animated, and people began checking their phones for the time more frequently. Children who had been playing quietly were called back to their parents' sides. Camera phones were readied, though everyone understood the unspoken rule about maintaining respectful distance. The morning sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the frost-covered grass. Steam rose from countless cups of hot drinks as people stamped their feet to stay warm. Despite the December chill, the mood remained cheerful and expectant. This was more than just celebrity watching. It was participation in a tradition that connected ordinary people with the institution of monarchy in its most human and accessible form. Near the church gates, a small group of royal photographers and television crews made their final preparations. Their equipment was set up with military precision, each angle calculated to capture the perfect shot of the royal family's arrival. Yet even these hardened professionals felt the magic of the moment as the anticipated time of the royal emergence drew near. The pathway itself seemed to hold its breath, ready to welcome the footsteps of kings and queens, princes and princesses in a ritual as old as the monarchy itself, but as fresh as Christmas morning. The heavy oak doors of Sandringham House swung open with a gentle creak that seemed to signal the beginning of something magical. King Charles stepped out first, his tall figure cutting an elegant silhouette against the grand entrance. He wore a long wool coat in deep navy blue, perfectly tailored and appropriate for both the solemn occasion and the winter weather. His face carried the composed expression of a man who had performed this ritual countless times, yet his eyes held a warmth that suggested he genuinely looked forward to these moments with his subjects. Queen Camilla appeared beside him, radiating quiet confidence and grace. Her choice of a rich burgundy coat complemented her husband's attire perfectly, and a delicate brooch caught the morning light. She had learned over the years to navigate these public appearances with natural ease, her smile genuine and welcoming as she prepared to greet the crowds who had waited patiently in the cold. Behind them emerged the Prince and Princess of Wales, their presence immediately causing a ripple of excitement through the gathered crowd. William walked with the measured pace of someone aware of his future role, while Catherine moved with the effortless elegance that had made her a global style icon. Their children followed close behind. Prince George, now growing tall and showing hints of the man he would become, Princess Charlotte with her confident stride and bright smile, and young Prince Louis, still small enough to occasionally reach for his mother's hand. The family gathered briefly on the front steps, allowing the photographers their essential shots, while also giving the public their first clear view of the royal party. This pause was choreographed, yet felt natural, a moment of connection before the formal procession began. As they moved down the pathway, the carefully maintained distance between the royal family and the crowd created a natural corridor. King Charles led the way, occasionally nodding to familiar faces in the crowd. His decades of public appearances had taught him to balance accessibility with dignity, and he moved with the unhurried pace of someone who understood that these encounters were precious to the people who had made the effort to attend. The crowd's reaction was a mixture of respectful silence and gentle murmurs of appreciation. Children pointed excitedly while their parents reminded them to wave politely. The clicking of camera phones created a quiet symphony, but the overall atmosphere remained reverent and warm. Queen Camilla walked slightly behind her husband, her experience as a royal consort evident in every gesture. She had mastered the art of the royal wave. Not too enthusiastic, not too reserved, but perfectly calibrated to acknowledge the crowd's presence while maintaining appropriate dignity. Her interactions with well-wishers had become more natural over the years, and she genuinely seemed to enjoy these opportunities to connect with the public. The Wales family created their own special dynamic within the larger group. William and Catherine maintained their roles as senior royals while also being attentive parents. Prince George walked with increasing confidence, aware of the cameras but not overwhelmed by them. Princess Charlotte displayed the poise that had charmed the public since her earliest appearances, while Prince Louis occasionally looked around with the curiosity natural to a young child experiencing this grand spectacle. The pathway to the church stretched ahead, lined with well-wishers whose faces reflected genuine affection for the family passing before them. This was more than duty for both the royals and their subjects. It was a shared celebration of tradition, continuity, and the special bond between the monarchy and the people it serves. The morning light caught details that would be remembered and discussed for months to come. The way King Charles's eyes crinkled slightly when he smiled, Queen Camilla's graceful handling of her coat in the breeze, the natural way the Wales children stayed close to their parents while still engaging with the moment. Each step brought them closer to the ancient church where their Christmas worship would continue, a tradition stretching back through centuries, connecting this modern royal family with countless generations who had walked this same path in service to both God and country. As the royal family made their way along the pathway, something wonderful began to happen. The formal procession gradually transformed into a series of genuine human connections that would be remembered by everyone present. King Charles, perhaps feeling the Christmas spirit more acutely than usual, began to deviate slightly from the direct path to the church, moving closer to the crowd barriers. An elderly gentleman in the front row, wearing medals from his military service, caught the king's attention. Charles approached him with sincere interest, extending his hand and leaning in to hear what the veteran had to say. Their conversation lasted only a few minutes, but the respect and warmth exchange between them represented something deeper, a connection between generations and a recognition of service that transcended royal protocol. "Thank you for your service," the king said quietly, his words carrying the weight of genuine gratitude. The veteran's eyes brightened as he responded with details about his regiment and his pride in meeting his monarch on this special day. Meanwhile, Princess Catherine had noticed a group of children who had been waiting particularly patiently. She approached them with the natural warmth that had made her beloved around the world. A little girl of about 6, dressed in her finest Christmas coat and clutching a small bouquet of flowers, stepped forward shyly. "These are for you, Your Royal Highness," the child whispered, her voice barely audible above the gentle murmur of the crowd. Catherine knelt down to the child's level, accepting the flowers with genuine delight. "They're absolutely beautiful," she said, her voice full of warmth. "Did you pick them yourself?" The little girl nodded proudly, and Catherine spent several more moments chatting with her about Christmas morning and whether Father Christmas had visited her house. Prince William found himself engaged in conversation with a group of local farmers who had known the estate for generations. Their discussion touched on agricultural concerns, environmental initiatives, and the changing face of rural Norfolk. These weren't superficial exchanges, but meaningful conversations that demonstrated William's genuine interest in the issues affecting the communities around Sandringham. The royal children, initially staying close to their parents, began to relax as they saw the friendly faces surrounding them. Prince George, showing maturity beyond his years, politely responded when adults spoke to him directly. Princess Charlotte displayed her characteristic confidence, waving enthusiastically at children her own age in the crowd. Young Prince Louis, still young enough to be spontaneous, occasionally pointed at interesting things he spotted, bringing smiles to everyone nearby. Queen Camilla engaged warmly with a group of women who had traveled from various parts of Norfolk for the occasion. Their conversation touched on local charities, community initiatives, and shared experiences of rural life. Camilla's genuine interest in their stories was evident, and she asked thoughtful questions that showed she had been listening carefully to their responses. The photographers and journalists present captured these interactions, but even they seemed touched by the authenticity of the moments unfolding before them. This wasn't performed royalty. This was a family genuinely connecting with the people who had made the effort to share Christmas morning with them. As the conversations continued, the scheduled arrival time at the church became less important than these precious human connections. The crowd seemed to understand that they were witnessing something special, not just a royal walkabout, but a genuine celebration of community and shared values. Local residents pointed out landmarks to the royal family, shared stories about previous Christmas visits, and expressed their appreciation for the royal family's continued connection to Sandringham. The royals, in turn, asked about local developments, remembered faces from previous years, and showed genuine interest in the lives and concerns of those they met. The warmth of these exchanges seemed to create its own microclimate, making the December cold less noticeable and the formal distance between royalty and subjects temporarily irrelevant. These were simply neighbors meeting on Christmas morning, sharing the joy of the season and the bonds of community that make such moments possible. The pathway to the church had become a venue for something much more meaningful than a ceremonial procession. It had become a place where the abstract concept of monarchy transformed into real human relationships built on mutual respect, shared traditions, and the simple pleasure of human connection on the most joyful day of the year. The ancient bells of St. Mary Magdalene Church began their gentle call to worship as the royal family finally approached the Norman stone building that had served as their spiritual home for generations. The small church, dating back to the 16th century, seemed to welcome them with its weathered walls and simple, dignified architecture. King Charles paused briefly at the entrance, looking up at the bell tower where generations of his ancestors had heard these same chimes on countless Christmas mornings. Inside the church, the atmosphere was both intimate and sacred. Unlike the grand ceremonies held at Westminster Abbey or St. George's Chapel, this service maintained the character of a village church celebration. The wooden pews, polished smooth by centuries of use, accommodated both the royal family and local parishioners who had been invited to share in this special worship service. The Reverend Canon Dr. Paul Williams welcomed the congregation with words that acknowledged both the sacred nature of the day and the unique gathering of people present. His sermon spoke of service, community, and the Christmas message of hope and renewal. As he spoke, King Charles listened with the attention of someone who understood that these words applied as much to his role as monarch as to his personal faith journey. The royal family participated fully in the service, their voices joining with the small congregation in familiar Christmas carols. The acoustics of the stone church carried their harmonized singing beyond the walls, where the patient crowd outside could hear the distant strains of "O Come, All Ye Faithful," and "Hark, the herald angels sing." These moments of shared worship created a sense of unity that extended far beyond the church building itself. During the quieter moments of prayer and reflection, each member of the royal family seemed lost in their own thoughts. King Charles, now in his second year as monarch, perhaps contemplated the responsibilities and opportunities that lay ahead. Queen Camilla's expression suggested gratitude for the role she had grown into and the acceptance she had found from the British people. The Prince and Princess of Wales used these moments to model appropriate behavior for their children while also finding their own spiritual center. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis sat quietly, occasionally whispering to their parents, but generally demonstrating the respect for worship that had been carefully taught to them. As the service concluded, the royal family made their way back outside, where the crowd had remained faithfully throughout the hour-long worship. The sight of their return created a gentle stir of excitement, but the solemnity of having just left church kept the atmosphere respectful and warm rather than boisterous. The return journey to Sandringham House offered another opportunity for connection. The royal family again took time to speak with different groups of well-wishers, ensuring that as many people as possible had the opportunity for a personal moment. Children who had waited patiently were rewarded with special attention. Elderly attendees were acknowledged with particular respect, and local residents were greeted like the neighbors they had effectively become. King Charles stopped to speak with several young families, asking about their Christmas plans and expressing genuine interest in their answers. His questions about local schools, community events, and family traditions showed an engagement with ordinary life that resonated deeply with those he spoke with. As they finally reached Sandringham House, the royal family turned for a final wave to the crowd that had made their Christmas morning so special. The gathered people responded with enthusiastic but dignified applause, their appreciation evident in their faces and gestures. The grand doors of Sandringham House closed gently behind the royal family, but the connections made during that Christmas morning walk would linger in the memories of everyone who had participated. For the royal family, it had been a reminder of why their service mattered and how deeply they were valued by the people they served. For the crowd, it had been a gift of access to history, tradition, and the simple pleasure of sharing Christmas morning with the royal family. Inside Sandringham House, the royal family would continue their private Christmas celebrations, but the morning's events had set a tone of gratitude, connection, and shared joy that would influence the entire day. The ancient tradition of the Christmas Day walk to church had once again proved its enduring power to bring people together in celebration of both faith and community, creating memories that would last long after the Christmas decorations were packed away for another year.